After a dominant performance by Southern's defense and missed opportunities by both teams, Alabama walks away from a trip to Baton Rouge with yet another loss, and the streak continues. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with us, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers who bet $5 can get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. And our episode wraps up with the biggest victory, in my opinion, of Eddie George's coaching career. But we kick off the episode with a two-part, a double feature, and it's our recap of our game of the week between Southern and Alabama A&M, a game that featured a bunch of missed opportunities on both sides, in my opinion. But before any of those get discussed, Southern's defense was dominant. I mean, Southern's defense is the reason that the Southern Jaguars, for another trip, kept Alabama A&M winless when they came down to Baton Rouge. I almost called him coach, but Mo, he came on the show and he talked about this streak, and we looked it up, and it's been since 2007 since this has happened, where Alabama A&M is winning and beat Southern at home, right, or on the road, I should say. It's been a while since they beat Southern, period, but specifically in Baton Rouge, and it was one of those things where, like, dang, okay, this is something to watch. And with that in the back of my mind, when the game hit triple zeros, I said, oh, well, the streak continues. And a lot of that, I'm going to say the lion's share, I mean, like 80% and up of this happened because Southern's defense was just this crippling. In the first half, you saw just dominant play, just all the way. We're just flat out not going to let you do a stinking thing. And then in the second half, it was more so game-changing plays when things did begin to happen. But let's break down both of those together. So in the first half, I want to read off to you Alabama A&M's drives. Three and out, a touchdown drive, a field goal drive that went 17 plays in 68 yards. So shout out to them on that. And then another 3 and out. And then they got the ball back technically at the end of the first half, but they just needed out. It was one play and that was it. So let's just look at those 4 plays. 3 and outs and a field goal drive. The field goal was good. 17 plays, 68 yards. Man, I don't think they got 6 yards the rest of the time. You had a 3 and out that went for negative yardage, another 3 and out that went for negative yardage, and then you had one drive that went 3 and out, but they got 6 yards on that drive. That was absolute domination by the Southern defense, and you really saw it in the defensive line that had 13 tackles for a loss in the game. This wasn't just in the first half, but in the game, they had 13 tackles for a loss. There was 13 tackles for a loss in this game, and then they also had 3 sacks. This was a dominant performance by the front line of Southern, especially Taj Brown. You saw him. I mean, Taj Brown, to me, was a early MVP. I don't know what the stats say, but when just watching it with my eyes, I saw a player that was absolutely dominant. That's what I was able to see. So then you look in the second half, and they were wrecking shop pretty much the whole game. But in the second half, Alabama A&M had a couple of drives in a row where they began to be able to put together offense. They had multiple drives where they were beyond 20 yards gained on each drive. And when you compare that to the first half, where you're looking at 3 drives that got less than 10 yards, three and outs, for them to be able to move the ball down the field 30, 40 yards, that was something that was major. So you did have a turnover. You had 4 turnovers in the second half, excuse me. But when those turnovers really kicked in was at the end of the game, in which the last 3 possessions, and this followed a touchdown, by the way, by Alabama A&M. But in the last 3 possessions of this game, the Alabama A&M Bulldogs turned the ball over on every single possession. And I don't say this to knock them. I will say that Quincy Casey was in this game, and I feel like if I don't mention it, it'd be irresponsible. Xavier Langford, excuse me, was supposed to be the starting quarterback for Alabama A&M. That didn't happen because he tweaked an injury in warmups. Quincy Casey was fighting for this job. So the fact that he was in there, I'm not taking much away from Southern. Okay, even if you want to talk about the quarterback change and, oh, well, we didn't have our guy. I understand, but you had one of the people you thought could have been your guy, and he was good enough for them to push this battle into the season. So it's not like it's just some Rudy poo. That's the way that I view it, right? And even that, you had Southern, who was able to force 3 fumbles, and they got an interception on the last play of the game. This was a signature win for them. So for that reason, them being able to have a sign out of, yes, the last play of this game, not just the last play that the offense had, but the last play of this game was an interception by us, and it made sense because we are the reason that we won this game, period. That's the way that I would feel about it. And that Southern defense, as dominant as they were, the offense was lackluster. The offense was as stagnant as they had been. In the first half, they put together some points. In the second half, they were gifted opportunity after opportunity. In the second half, they had 46 total yards. Let me make sure I got that right. Yes, in the second half, 46 total yards for the Southern offense. You compare that to not just the first half, but the first drive of the game, they had 75 yards. This is the type of consistency that we're talking about from the offense, where they consistently stall out in the second half. They have nice starts, but then when the game continues to roll on, it's almost as if they continuously get figured out each time. Southern was gifted 3 possessions inside the 10-yard line of Alabama A&M, and they came away from those 3 possessions with 10 points. You can tell that's not how it's supposed to be. It's not. You didn't score on all 3. And we'll break down how they only got 10 points as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Betterhelp. And I believe that there's this false stigma around therapy as if you're broken, if you need to go somebody and find somebody to talk to. That's not true. Be a part of breaking the stigma. It's false and it's been around too long. Sometimes you're just going through some tough decisions. Maybe there's some things going on in your personal life you want to talk through with somebody. Maybe there's just certain things that you can't figure out and you want to try to figure them out. Therapy is great for a bunch of different reasons. And if you're new to therapy, or if you're thinking about starting therapy, then you should give BetterHelp a try. It's simple. It's entirely online, and it suits you in the way that if you don't like this first licensed therapist that they have, you can continue finding new ones and new ones. It's not an extra charge to you, and it's completely online. You can do it in the comfort of your own home, and you can talk to people that way. All right, all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you can go to betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege. Today, you'll get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com, HELP, betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege, and get 10% off your first month. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, I truly do appreciate it. And this week, Friday, 10 a.m., noon, Central, we'll have our college football kickoff live on this channel, streaming, Locked On HBCU, streaming for 2 hours. So make sure you come here and check it out. Don't check it out nowhere else. Check it out right here. But I want to continue with our discussion. about Alabama A&M versus Southern. And we wrapped up segment 1 with the failures of the offense. And one of the failures is the fact that they were given the ball 3 times inside the 10-yard line and only came up with 10 points. Now, the reason that is something to be disappointed at is there's no real way to score, not even no real way. There's no way to score on all of those possessions and equal out to 10. Granted, you could kick a field goal every time and it'd be 9, it'd be less points. But in a way, 10 points is even more disappointing because you know that they weren't able to score on one of those drives. And it's like, why weren't you able to punch it in? Why weren't you able to kick a field goal? That's because they missed the field goal. And this was one of the missed opportunities that they had during the game. If you allow me to rewind for a second, I'll get into what I believe was the biggest missed opportunity. It may be an opportunity to put this game away with 30 minutes left to play. And that's Kendrick Grimes on the 1-yard line. And it's tough to really just identify him, but he's the one who fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line with just a couple of seconds left in the game. The reason I hate identifying him isn't because I don't want to call out players. I do it all the time. But it's the fact that Kendrick Grimes got them to this point with a really nice catch along the sidelines. So it was a tough blow for him to be the one who fumbled the ball into the end zone, and it was recovered by Alabama A&M. At that time, it was 10-3 Southern. And at that time, 17-3 felt like a hill that would have been too high for them to climb. I don't think that Alabama A&M was coming back from a 17-3 deficit at halftime. But when you look at the numbers and you look at the stats and everything that happened in the first half, Southern outgained them by nearly 200 yards and were only up 7 points. That fumble into the end zone, the ability or the lack of ability to capitalize and cash in on a ball being at the 1-yard line with at least 3 points. At least 3 points. Not being able to capitalize with anything, I feel like was just a representation of the day to that point where you done so much offensively, but on the scoreboard, it looks like nothing. So now you're only down 7 or you're only up 7 points and they have life. They just forced a fumble. Not only do they have life because it's close, they have life because they just made a play that kept it close. So that's one of the things that I think was one of the biggest opportunities that were missed. But then you look at, that's not all it was. Southern had a punt block. It wasn't a punt block because the punt block was coming and it was clearly about to be blocked. And then the punter just said, nah, we're not kicking this. I'm going to try to do something. Did nothing with it, got tackled. And technically it was a turnover on downs. But really, this was a punt block type situation. That was a situation where you didn't get any points. You kicked the field goal and missed it. And you got the ball inside the 10-yard line. That's disappointing. That's a missed opportunity. And I think there's multiple points where each team will look at this film and kind of cringe and say, we got to have this. Even on that punt block. For me, punt blocks are one of those situations where I'll speak from a fan perspective. It's always on me. If I'm punting the ball, or excuse me, if I'm blocking the punt, I did that. I did something exceptional. My team did that, I should say. Right? My team was able to come off the edge. They were able to do all of these things. I got different ways to describe exactly what my team was able to do. But if my punt got blocked, we got to shut this up. They didn't do anything right. We only did things wrong. Now, some people treat a lot of things in football that way. Not me. I'm all for giving props to the opponent. Sometimes we call passes dropped when it was a good play by the defensive back. I'm going to acknowledge that the defense can make good plays. Some people talk like the offense either succeeded or they failed independently of the defense, unless it's actually an interception, right? A lot of times that's how people treat it, not me. But when it comes to punts, I do treat it that way where it's all on me, man. Like, I ain't gonna lie. Either I did good or I messed up, but you didn't do good. You didn't force it and you didn't mess up. It's either all my fault or all my praise, right? But that being said, I think that Alabama A&M will look at that as a regret. Maybe not a missed opportunity, but a regret nonetheless. And they got their own missed opportunities to look at because just like Southern fumbled at the 1, Alabama A&M fumbled at the 1. They were driving down the field. This was actually after the touchdown that they scored. They drove all the way down to the 1-yard line and it looked like they were finally getting some momentum. But remember what I said in segment 1. Excuse me. Remember what I said in segment 1. When they started getting rhythm, Southern started getting turnovers. So you drive all the way down to the 1-yard line after getting a touchdown. And it looks like, okay, we're about to tie this game up. And you fumble at the 1. And after that, fumble again. Then after that, an interception. So it was a situation where You had a lot going for you at that moment, and then all of the momentum was just stripped away from you. And that's that I don't know if I want to say that's the biggest missed opportunity, because I still kind of feel like Southern's not putting the game away. No, I forget it. Yeah. I'm gonna say that this was the biggest missed opportunity because you lost the game and you weren't able to get any points. And if you would have scored this touchdown, maybe you do get points and maybe you do win because now it's tied. Or you score this touchdown, you get points, and maybe you do win because the game is tied. So yeah, it's there. It's there. To make it worse, Coach Maynard actually called to go for it on 4th and 3. I would have kicked it. Personally, I would have kicked it. But he opted to go for it. He got it. Like, actually capitalized and got the points. I mean, got the first down, excuse me, on 4th down, 4th and 3. And then you fumble at the 1. And even though you let your nuts hang, even though you really take a chance, you gonna sit here and tell me that you get no points out of it, and it wasn't even because you was risking anything? That's a tough pill to swallow. And overall, Southern comes out the victor, but they had their missed opportunities. Alabama A&M lost, so of course you're going to look at them as having missed opportunities. But I feel like Southern had more things placed on the table for them. This was a game that was way closer than it should have been. And anybody who was watching from the Southern side, I believe, would agree. You're looking at 3 possessions inside the 10-yard line. You walk away with 10 points. That is the epitome of a missed opportunity. You have to be better. You have to at least get that 13. You have to make that field goal. Like, things like this have to be done. You want to get touchdowns. If I give you 3 possessions, if I give you any odd number of possessions inside the 10-yard line, I want more touchdowns than field goals. I want more touchdowns than field goal attempts. They attempted more field goals than they scored touchdowns. That's a problem. The offense is stalled out again. The SWAC West is looking a little shaky. That'll actually be something we discuss on Thursday, so I'll leave it there. But the SWAC West is looking a little shaky right now, but that's all right, because we're not even talking about the SWAC no more. We moving on to the Big South OVC, the collaboration, the coming together, the merger. Because in the first game in that conference, Tennessee State brought it all the way down to the wire. They knocked off Gardner Webb in what, in my opinion, is Eddie George's biggest win of his career. And I'll dive into why as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Brewing, and Athletic Brewing is a game changer in non-alcoholic beers, the same way that James Lowry is a game changer because he knocked in the game-winning field goal for the Tennessee State Tigers. And listen, excuse me, there's no time that you can't drink Athletic Brews. Out with the kids, at soccer practice, watching the game, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, you don't have to worry about hangovers because these are non-alcoholic brews. And they have even been in competition with the regular brews. And listen, who came out victorious? I don't think it's rocket science. It was Athletic Brewing. So come on now to the best tasting non-alcoholic brews in town. You can either get them in store or you can go on athleticbrewing.com, and the first time customers will get 15% off your offer. That's athleticbrewing.com/locked, or excuse me, use the code locked on LOCKEDON, and you will get 15% off your offer. As wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. And for the second time in about 2 weeks, I forgot to put my little graphic up, but at least we have it for segment 3. And now you know that we're about to discuss Eddie George's biggest win of his coaching career. That's how I view it. Tennessee State fans, let me know. Do you feel differently? Because to me, this victory of Tennessee State over Gardner Webb in week 3 of the 2023 season is the biggest victory thus far in Eddie George's coaching career. The one you could put next to it for me is probably the first win, because the first win means a lot to people. But as somebody who has studied and been around Eddie George's second year, I wasn't hosting this during his first year. Maybe I missed something in that time frame. But being able to see year 2 and year 3 and looking back at what happened in year 1, to me, this is the biggest victory of his coaching career. And there's three reasons for it. One, who it is. Two, the timing. And then three, how it happened. All of those things are equally important, but I'll start off with who it is because they knocked off Gardner Webb. And this is a team that came in as the champions of the Big South. So they're one of the returning champions. And I understand that it can be a bit risky to only base somebody based off of what they did the previous year. But we're still pretty early in the year. And I think that being a returning champion gives you a little bit of cachet. Up to this point, they were 1-1. They lost to Appalachian State, but they won their only FCS competition up to this point, and that was a game against Elon. So you go 1-1, and now you face Tennessee State, and Tennessee State knocks you off. See, sometimes we have a tendency when we want to downgrade somebody when they come up victorious. Oh man, that team wasn't that good anyway. They were 1-1. There was no reason to sit here and think that Gardner Webb wasn't a good team. G-Dub looked good. They still had Gaither. Like they still had players from that previous team. So I'm not sitting here and saying, "Oh, we gotta kind of just shake this loss off." No, that would be unfair, and I'd be moving the goalpost. Oh, well, Tennessee State ain't even that good anyway. If you don't want Tennessee State to be that good, that's cool. But let's not downgrade Gardner Webb because of it. Maybe Gardner Webb goes on down the line and they show themselves to not be that good of a team. But right now, they look like one. They have the reputation of being one. And we're talking about a team that Coach George came in and said is one of the better FCS teams or is a good FCS program. I won't say one of the better. I don't want to get into all those things, but he did say they're respected. They're a respected FCS program. And you knocked them off. And they're in the conference with you. So this gets to the timing. This is your first conference play. And you come up with this game and you win this game. Not only is it the first conference game, it's week 3. The reason that's important is because they didn't have a winning record at any point last year. And in 2021, George's first year as a coach, they didn't have a winning record until week 7. Now in week 3, they're 2-1. They have a good winning record. They knocked off UAPB, and the only game they lost was to Notre Dame. When you're good early, it's easy to buy in. Simple and plain. When you're not playing catch up, it's easy to buy in. When you don't start the season off with a bad taste in your mouth, it's easier to buy in. Like these are all things that we have to acknowledge. And these are all things that don't only go for fans, but it also goes for the team. Sometimes when you're in a situation where, like, I don't even know if we that good. I've been on a team that wasn't that good. In high school. I know what it's like when you see people quit. When you know, and we made playoffs that year, but nobody felt good about it because there were struggles at the beginning of the year. Meanwhile, they just came off of my school at that time, had just came off of a season in which many people felt like we should have made it to state or at least farther in the playoffs than we did. So there was a lot of good feelings off of that team. But you see the tone of a squad, and I know I'm only speaking from my high school reference, but tone in environment and how you feel and people, like that's one of the things that's consistent. It grows and it evolves and it's different, but it's consistent in the way that you're dealing with people and their emotions. And people can quit. People aren't quitting on good teams often. I'm telling you that right now. They're not. So when you show early that you're good, your team's going to buy in to what you're saying because it's led to success. Then lastly, how it happened. And this was the dramatics because there was a lot of just dramatics in this game. James Lowry, the player who, in my opinion, was the game changer, and you're looking at the Athletic Brewing, I named him there. James Lowry knocked in 2 field goals with 6.5 minutes left. The first one was 49 yards. Nice field goal, good length. But I guess that wasn't enough. That wasn't dramatic enough. He said, we got to level this up. Even if it's just about 1 yard, we got to go a little bit farther. 49, no, don't do that. Stop right here. 50-yard field goal. 9 seconds left in the game. Trust my leg. Coach George said, okay, we're going to trust your leg. We down 1 point. We need you to make this field goal. It's 50 yards. You got it? Yeah, I got it, man. Career-long field goal for the game winner. Shout out to James Lowry. Because I thought that moment, 49 yards, 50 yards, 2 long field goals to make sure that you came back and win, that added to things. But not only that, the defense only allowed a touchdown in the whole second half. That's it, 7 points. The offense gave up a safety, But even that, 9 points in the second half, 7 by your touchdown, or 7 by your defense, 1 touchdown. Then you look at the offense and what they were able to do. Devion Bryant left the game early. Draylon Ellis said, I did used to play quarterback for this team. I was the starter last year, but you did this with your backup quarterback. You did this with a dominant defensive performance in the second half. You did this with a backup quarterback, and you did this with 245 plus in 150-yard field goal in the last 6.5 minutes. And as much as it feels a little weird to call Draylon Ellis the backup quarterback, the truth of the matter is Brian is the guy. And when Brian returns back from injury, because they have a week off and they expect him to be back the following game, Draylon Ellis will not be playing much. They'll still find a package for him to get him involved, but they were able to win this game with their backup quarterback. This is the biggest victory in Eddie George's coaching career. And until somebody can tell me otherwise, that's exactly how I'm going to feel, and that's the exact reason I'm going to feel this way. But I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, staying true to the program. Thank you for that, genuinely and truly. And on tomorrow's episode, we'll be back with the battle for the real HU, Hampton versus Howard. And speaking of streaks not being able to end, Howard's collapse is the reason that they still have not been able to beat Hampton for, 8 years in a row now? 9 years in a row? Don't worry, Howard. I ain't making fun of you. I've been there. I'm still there. But I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, you can follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. So until then, next time we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.